Alrighty, good afternoon. You're listening to Your Wheeling No Two Ways About It here on The Watchdog. As usual, I'm your host, Mayor Glenn Elliott. I am joined today in the studio by co-host Vice Mayor Chad Thalman. We do have a really exciting guest coming up at 12:30. We have Andrew Hollis, the owner and operator of Wheelcraft Bicycles. It's out there in Elm Grove. He's going to talk about not only being a small business owner in Wheeling, but Andrew, for someone, if you follow the Members of Wheeling page online or just his online presence, he takes a lot of pictures of architecture and different Wheeling buildings and different Wheeling neighborhoods. Really, I'm just going to explore his perspective on all things Wheeling. I found them to be somewhat interesting, and I'm excited to hear what he has to say today. This is not a City Council week, Mr. Vice Mayor, so did you come to the studio with anything else you want to talk about?
You know what, Mayor, I figured we could give a few updates on things that going on around town, some things people might have seen, some things that people might not be aware about. I think a lot of people saw some bricks fall off the Marsh Stogie building that's on the north end of downtown Wheeling, and repairs happened or started happening pretty quick on that building. The Marsh building is owned by Steve Kuhn. Steve Kuhn is the same developer that is in the process of rehabbing the Wheeling-Pittsburgh Steel building. His plan for the last several years has been to make the Wheeling-Pittsburgh Steel building into roughly 120 apartments. That first floor, which is the Market Street floor, and then the basement of that building, which is below Market Street, would be some sort of retail commercial space, and then the upper floors, and that's a 12-story building, the upper floors would be housing. He also wants to do something very similar to the Marsh building. I believe that would be in the ballpark of 60 housing units, so roughly half the size of Wheeling Pit. But he is making repairs to the bricks that fell off the Wheeling Pit building. My understanding is
off
those
the Marsh building.
Off the Marsh building.
Yeah.
And my understanding is those bricks were not structural.
Yeah.
But those repairs are taking place.
Yeah, I remember the first time I went in the Marsh building several years ago with Mr. Kuhn and his team, and I was nervous about that because from the outside you could see those bricks had begun to bow a little bit outward, and it looked like, is this building structurally sound? But then you get inside and you realize the building is completely reinforced with steel framing. And so those bricks, while were problematic, they were not structurally compromising the building, and it's good to see them being addressed now. That is a really neat building. It's a very different layout than Wheeling Pit. It's much more horizontal than vertical. I think it's only 4 stories, but it's spread out over a large configuration. I know that Mr. Kuhn's looking at different options for that building, not only just housing, but maybe some office space, maybe some first floor retail component there. I know that space has also been looked at as a possible site of the first floor being a sort of Wheeling Heritage Museum or Visitor Center, because it's right off the Fort Henry Bridge. So there's a lot of different uses for that building down the road. The goal now, of course, is just to keep the building stabilized, and I was glad to see Mr. Kuhn's team out there working on it. Those bricks have been in a bad situation for a while. I know he's also done some work on the roof, basically just taking steps to make the building, what's called mothball the building, to keep it secure and sound in the meantime, because right now, obviously, Wheeling Pit is the higher priority focus and project. But at the end of the day, it'd be nice to see both those buildings activated here in 3 or 4 years. I think it's really going to change the entire look and feel of downtown. When you get off the Fort Henry Bridge, already you're going to see the new Jeff Woda apartments there on the 9th and Main Street former surface parking lot we had there. That's going to be 46 units. I always get the numbers off. I think 46 unit apartment building right there. You add another 40 or 50 units in Marsh and maybe some retail and other office space there, and that view you see when you come off the Fort Henry Bridge is going to look a lot better than it does today.
And that Marsh building does have the old Marsh sign on the top of the building. My understanding, last time I spoke to Steve about it, is he did have plans to bring that sign back to life and eventually light it up. And I believe the time frame we're looking at is he's been working on Wheeling Pit for about a year now. I think he has a small crew in there for about the last year. My understanding is in the next maybe month or two, there's going to be a much larger crew in the Wheeling Pit building. And then at some point in time, in a year from now, maybe 2 years from now, as the Wheeling Pit project is winding down and is almost completed, he's going to start to move people over to the Marsh building. So here in the next few years, we're going to see roughly an additional 200 plus housing units in downtown Wheeling that we currently don't have.
And that is, key to a lot of the different things we've been trying to accomplish. I've said it many times, but it does bear repeating that, so many people have a memory of downtown Wheeling as a big retail hub, and we've all seen the pictures, and some of us are old enough to remember. I was born in '71. I can certainly remember the waning days of downtown's grandeur as a retail hub. You know, my grandmother would take me down there on Saturdays. We would do the gambit from Horns and Gimbals and Kaufman's. We'd always get to Stone's in the tea room, and then I would beg her to take me to Louis Hot Dogs. You know, that was our Saturday routine for many years, and that was not even probably what is considered the peak of downtown's greatness. That probably happened somewhere in the late 50s or mid 60s when it really peaked. And of course, like so many cities across the Rust Belt, the downtown retail market dried up here. People think Wheeling is somehow unique in this regard, but this is the norm across the Rust Belt. Downtown's dried up. All the retail moved out to shopping malls, exactly what we saw happen here. A lot of the storefronts downtown died up because of lack of foot traffic. You were left with a downtown with basically banks, some law firms, and a lot of vacant lots and vacant buildings. And that's exactly where Wheeling found itself probably 20 or 25 years ago. And the city's been working to sort of counter that ever since. And the strategy that we've really made a central priority is to take the existing building footprints that we have or any empty surface lots that we have and fill up the spaces with people who are living there, people who can spend money in the downtown, sort of downtown first floor economy because they live there. So they wake up, they're going to go get a coffee somewhere, they're going to get a bagel somewhere, they're going to eat breakfast somewhere, they're going to walk around the block until they find something, that satisfies their immediate needs. And that's the idea, is to fill up these buildings and spaces we have with people, get those people to spend money, and then basically create a sort of a circular downtown economy where the first floor retail is driven in part by the people living there, but that will in turn then lead to more retail, and then you make downtown into a destination again. When going back in my own life, going downtown was a destination. My grandmother and I would get in her car. I'd probably sit in the front seat without a seatbelt because it was the '70s, and hey, that's what people did then. I don't recommend that. But we go downtown and park and just walk around, and you didn't have to have a specific destination. Downtown was the destination. Right now, we have enough missing pieces to where people don't come downtown unless they have a specific purpose. We want to get it to the point now where you come downtown and it has something, no matter what you're looking to do, there's something there for you. And that's not going to happen tomorrow. It's not going to happen even the next year or so. But we're seeing more and more of the opportunities for that. I really feel like COVID was a big punch in the gut in this regard because things had been picking up in downtown foot traffic. I watch it every day because I live and work downtown. And it seemed like it really scaled back with COVID, with a lot of the workers then working from home. But now I'm seeing more people walking their dogs. I'm seeing people jogging. I'm seeing people out, not just 9 to 5, but people out early in the morning, people walking the streets at nighttime as well. And it's slowly seeing that transformation that, projects like Wheeling Pit and Marsh and the new Doris project are going to keep kind of pushing that needle forward until we get to the point when downtown is full of people, not only, 9 to 5, but full of people really at 7 a.m. To midnight every day. You're going to see a lot more people there, and that's the goal.
Yeah, and Mayor, as you know, getting more people living downtown is something we've been focused on for the last 6 years, the entire time we've been on council. There's a handful of things that we've really focused on. Getting more people living downtown is one of them. Finding a parking solution for a growing downtown. Some people may be surprised to hear, but prior to COVID, there was a parking shortage on the north end of downtown. Of course, the city is moving forward with building a new parking garage, which will also help with the 200-plus housing units that we're going to see over the next year or two, or maybe 3 years in downtown Wheeling. We've really taken steps to remove blight and clean up our neighborhoods. Over the last year, the city's made some significant progress in demolishing old structures, and over the next year or so, I think we're going to be able to demolish even more structures. Paving and recreation is something else we focused a lot on. This city council and the previous city council has really put an unprecedented amount of money towards paving. We still have a lot more streets and alleys that need paved. Just friendly reminder, Main Street, Market Street, and downtown Wheeling are not city streets. They're part of West Virginia Route 2.
It doesn't matter if you remind people. We'll still get criticized for it. It doesn't matter.
But we have focused a lot on paving and recreation. About every single playground in the city of Wheeling has been replaced or at least has seen new playground equipment. There's a few more playgrounds, including a big one, Edgerton Lane, that we still need to replace, but plans are moving forward for that. We've wanted to find a solution for our first responders, new headquarters, police and fire. Of course, we are moving forward with that. The new police headquarters is a little further along than the new fire headquarters, but progress is being made there. And we've wanted to take steps to reduce basement flooding after hard rains. That's not necessarily something that happens overnight. That's a long-term project, but I think we have made some progress there. And of course, economic development and quality of life quality of life issues are something we've always been focused on and also.
And I think what, you mentioned a lot of things that are going on, but, quality of life is something it's easy to talk about, but what does it really mean? For me, quality of life is the types of things that is going to, A, keep and retain people here, B, but also attract the type of workforce that is going to then bring the types of jobs and employers here in the first place. We've talked to many different employers who, when they look at our workforce numbers and our demographics, West Virginia has a low workforce participation rate. We're an older population. They look at those numbers, and it's not exactly an incentive to move and invest in Wheeling if you're not sure if you're going to be able to get the workforce here. One of the things we focused on, recognizing that is, we have to make Wheeling into the type of city where people want to live. I use a couple examples. We have two great examples of companies that have come here in the last 20 years. The law firm of Orrick, and then we have Williams Lee, which has about 600 employees downtown. But a significant fraction of their workforce does not live in Wheeling. They live either Washington, PA, Pittsburgh, or Eastern Ohio, and they drive in each day instead of living here. Now, some of them are probably never going to live here for whatever reason, but I guarantee you, from talking to officials there, there's a portion of their workforce that would live here if Wheeling offered the sort of lifestyle that they're looking for. If we had a downtown economy with some more than one sort of microbrewery with some things to do, where you can all walk, where you don't need a car to get around every day, where you can live and work within a few block radius and have a different 8 or 9 restaurants while there. That's the type of stuff people are looking for, especially the young professional market we're trying to attract. And as long as we don't have that, it's going to be hard to get more employers to come here. You can have all the jobs you want. I know many employers now who are advertising for jobs they can't find people. Well, the people are, these days more than ever, maybe it was different 30 or 40 years ago, but people are choosing where they want to live first based on what that area offers in terms of quality of life, and then they're looking for the jobs. It's not the other way around like a lot of people think. People think if you just have jobs, it'll solve all of our problems. Well, we can have, we can have 20,000 jobs available in Wheeling tomorrow, but who's going to actually do those jobs if we don't have people living here? And so it has to be both. You have to focus on economic development, but in the same breath, you have to focus on quality of life. And those two are not separated. Like, when we ran for office, we talked about playgrounds, and I got mocked for it. I was called the swing set candidate. But playgrounds matter. We get a lot of complaints these days about, and not the playgrounds that we've done, but the playgrounds we haven't done fully yet, because people want to see their playgrounds look like the best of them. So, that is an issue. And I think we have a caller, Lola.
Yes, we do. It's Dan.
Hey, Dan, how you doing today?
Well, hello, Mayor and Vice Mayor.
Hello.
I keep hearing that we need more parking in downtown Wheeling. Are you aware there's probably 5,000 parking spots between 10th Street and that square circle right there? We have the intermodal. You have that one there. Then you have the mall center. And then you have the Wheeling, the one up there by the tunnels. And then we have one across the street from the tunnels. And then if you go further down the street, there's one next to the restaurant that just closed up. I don't know if it's closed up, but I just don't see a lot of people there. And then where you're sitting at right now, there's, I don't know, probably about 140 spots. And if you go down to the next corner, next to the United Bank, there's probably about another 50 spots. And if you go across the street, there's probably about another 40 spots there. If you go a little bit further down the street, where it's called the intermodal transportation, where everybody sits outside on benches because the city has leased it out to people that have a little grocery store in there. And then you make the turn down by West Virginia Northern. There's a parking place there, and on the other side of the Civic Center, you probably have another 80 spots.
Yeah.
Okay, and the McFlure House, it's been remodeled. They have, I imagine they have about 300 spots in there. That's right across the street from Wheeling, right across the street from where the Wheeling-Pittsburgh Steel Building would be built.
Yeah.
And all these parking, some of them have parking, but some of them are like 90% without anybody in them.
Yeah. Well,
So you want to study on parking in downtown Wheeling before we bring any more in, because there's much more things that we could do with money, and things like that than build more parking lots. We have a lot of housing coming down, but they're income based. So you're not going to bring a lot of high-paying, people that want to pay high rent into downtown Wheeling that's going to spend money. You know what I mean?
Dan, yeah, a couple things there just to correct. The projects we're talking about at Wheeling Pit and Marsh are not income-based projects. Those are market rate projects. So the expectation is that a lot of those people will have cars. And the other issue is you're talking about a lot of private lots. Some of those lots are available for public parking and some aren't. I know people who've tried to park in numerous lots downtown and cannot get a monthly pass to park in them. But I think the biggest thing I want to point out is that there's a difference between a parking lot and a parking garage when you're looking on sort of downtown revitalization. A parking lot is probably the least efficient use of real estate in a downtown business district. It provides very little tax value. It doesn't provide much for an experience. It's not nice to look at. It doesn't make walking around it any interesting. I mean, it really offers very little. A parking garage, which puts the cars off the streets and then has first floor retail, is a very different thing. We certainly looked at Wheeling Pit and trying to look at other options for that. But in talking to the developer, you're asking people to, it's already pretty far asking people to walk 3 buildings over to go to a garage, but you're asking people to cross the streets or go down when they may have a baby stroller or groceries. It's just not going to happen. So if you don't have parking right next to Wheeling Pit, it's not going to work. We've looked into this. Trust me, if there was a cheaper way to do it, I'd gladly jump on it. But from our perspective, a parking garage, which actually gets the cars off the street, makes a lot more sense than any more surface lots. We want to get rid of it, as many surface lots as we can.
There are 6 parking garages within, that you have one parking garage up by the Bridge Tavern. You have
Yes.
a parking across the street, off-street parking, next to where the doctor's offices used to be, across from the plaza, and then you have the mall center. That's another parking garage. Then you have the intermodal. That's a parking garage. That gets cars off the street.
Absolutely.
Okay, how about this thing? Okay, back in the day, they took stuff that was eminent domain. If there was something that, wasn't feasible or somebody, the city wanted it. Rather than the slum and blight of the Wheeling Inn, why don't you just take possession of that, tear it down, and you can have a parking lot there? We'll have another parking lot.
That's look, I'm not as a general rule, I'm not a fan of eminent domain. It certainly has a role to play in our society, but I don't think that should be the strategy. It shouldn't be the first strategy. You should always try to work with people in the first place. Now, obviously, on the Wheeling Inn situation, I'm recused, and I can't even chime in on that conversation. But as a general rule, I think eminent domain should be the last resort, not the first. It's something we certainly looked at, but while we've been in office, we have not moved forward with it. It was done back in 2013-14 for the East Wheeling Sports Field, and there are still some hard feelings in that community as a result of it. So to me, it's something you always, it's a tool you have as a city, but it's a tool to be used very sparingly, in my opinion. You should always look at other options because it leaves a bad taste in some people's mouths sometimes. And my family, both my mother's and father's family, lived in Elm Grove prior to I-70 coming through, and I can tell you from talking to grandparents over the years how much that impacted their lives, and they never, actually both sides of my family never felt like they ever lived in a house they loved as much as the one that they lost back in Elm Grove. So, eminent domain is not something you just sort of toss around. It's something that sometimes it has to happen, but yeah.
I grew up in Elm Grove, too, and I lost my property in eminent domain.
Yeah.
There's a difference between eminent domain and slum and blight.
Well,
when you're building up your city, and the first thing you see is a nice guitar on a building that's been remodeled, and then you come around the corner and you see, helter skelter, as Charlie Manson would say. I'm going to hang up and just listen. But, we have way too much parking and not enough business. I see a lot of pop-up places that say coming soon, coming soon, coming soon. But they've been coming for, down on Market Street. There's 4 businesses say coming soon, but they've never showed up.
All right,
Thank
David.
you.
Yeah, appreciate you calling in. On the parking issue, one thing I just want to add is that prior to COVID, and I anticipate here within the next year or so we'll get back to this point, but prior to COVID, there was actually a parking shortage on the north end of downtown Wheeling. The 10th Street parking garage was full every single day, at least Monday through Friday during business hours. And the Doris on Main is eliminating, I think, a parking lot that had roughly 50 spaces, and then they're going to need, in addition to eliminating those 50 spaces, they're going to need, 40 spaces in the 10th Street parking garage to accommodate the 40 or so units that are going to be in the Doris on Main. So that's a net swing of 90 or 100 parking spaces that we're going to need. The Marsh building is going to need roughly 60. The Wheeling Pit building is going to need over 100, not to mention West Banco, Williams Lee are expanding over time. They need more and more parking. So I am confident that the new parking garage that's going to be built will be full within the first few months or the first year or so. The one parking garage that is not typically full Monday through Friday during business hours is the intermodal down by West Banco Arena. But if there is anything at West Banco Arena that fills up the arena, that parking garage is typically full when there's an event going on.
Yeah, and just one more comment. Generally, we're looking to satisfy the parking demand we're going to have when all the different missing pieces get filled in. We're not looking at the parking demand right now. Obviously, we're still coming out of a pandemic where a lot of employers are not at full capacity at their desks right now. And the 10th Street garage is not full today, but as the Vice Mayor said, prior to COVID, the 10th Street garage was full when you saw people parking all the way up Chaplin Street because they couldn't get in the parking garage. Now we're going to be taking away one of those surface lots on 9th and Main, and then we're going to be, giving or reserving for that project somewhere around 45 or whatever parking spaces in the 10th Street garage, which is going to reduce the capacity there. And so once we come out of COVID and we get more people working again downtown, I expect that garage to fill up quickly. And I think while it's great we have another city garage down at 14th and Main Street, it's just not realistic in Wheeling to expect people to walk 3 or 4 blocks from where they work to where they park. In places like DC or New York or Philly, you may do that because that's the best lot you can get, but it's not realistic here for people to walk that far. So it's great we have 800 spaces in the 14th and Main Street Bird Garage, but unfortunately we don't have that much parking demand around that building. We have a lot more demand in the northern part of downtown right now and in the foreseeable future. Ideally, as investment moves south down towards 14th Street, we will be able to fill up that garage as well. And it's certainly nice to have that capacity there for future growth.
Yeah, and as the mayor said, we are trying to be proactive when it comes to parking. The new garage that's being built is going to take over a year from start to finish. So we're trying to accommodate the parking demand we think we're going to have in roughly a year from now. And we are pretty confident that parking demand in downtown Wheeling is going to increase, if for no other reason than just we're getting an extra 200 housing units in downtown Wheeling over the next 2 years or so, and we anticipate a lot of the other businesses in downtown Wheeling will be expanding. Mayor, we're getting close to the bottom of the hour break. There's a few things I just wanted to mention, just a few updates that people may not know that are going on, kind of exciting things in my mind. We've been working for about a year now. Myself, Councilman Ty Thorngate, Councilman Rosemary Ketchum, yourself, other members of City Council have been pushing forward to get a splash pad added in downtown Wheeling. And this is the location we're looking at is by West Banco Arena, kind of closer to Heritage Port. There's a grassy area, and we've been looking for about a year now to add a splash pad there. I know city staff has been working on this for about a year. We're anxiously awaiting city staff to line everything up and get this on the council agenda for council approval. City council does still have to approve the funding for it. I'm optimistic city council will, but that might be an exciting addition to downtown Wheeling, a new splash pad there by Heritage Port. And in addition to that splash pad, the city is looking at adding splash pads to the Warwood swimming pool and the Grandview swimming pool. Those will be much smaller splash pads, and you can only access those splash pads by entering the fenced-in pool area, whereas the downtown splash pad would not be fenced in. It would be open to the public. It might be turned off or closed in the evening hours. But those are 3 splash pads that I'm optimistic in the next year or two will hopefully within the next several months will be on the council agenda, and hopefully by next summer we're going to see some progress on those being built. The only other thing I wanted to mention, Mayor, that we've been working on again for about a year is a lot of people noticed that Market Plaza, or some people refer to it as the Plaza on Market, that 11th Street area. 11th Street used to be a street. Now it's a pedestrian walkway. There were lights added over 11th Street in that Market Plaza area maybe 2 or 3 years ago, We are looking at doing something very similar at Center Market, above the streets around the Market House. Again, that's been a work in progress for about a year. City staff, in particular, I believe the assistant city manager, has been working on getting a price for that, so that can be put on the council agenda. But I think that's something that would really add to Center Market area. We talk about downtown, not being the destination it was in the 1950s or the 1960s. Center Market, I think, is the destination. It's a really great part of town. And I think adding lights over the street, similar to what we have there on 11th Street and Market Plaza area, would really add to that. And I'm hopeful and optimistic that city staff will keep moving forward with that, and we'll see that on the council agenda here in the next month or two. But Mayor, I think we're a little bit late for the bottom hour break, so we're going to take a short commercial break. When we come back, Andrew from Wellcraft will be joining us. Stay tuned in.